All right, so our topic is money. Nice.
It's easier to control, right?
Money can't buy happiness.
Money can't buy you love.
Money can't buy you love. That's right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And love don't pay the rent. Therein lies the problem.
But, there's been a lot of research conducted, and as a person's income goes up, their happiness, there's an inverse proportion or inverse relationship between wealth and happiness.
It's true. It's true.
And is it because when you acquire more, there's more stress, there's more you have to worry about, and there's more
then you're afraid
and then you're afraid it's going to be taken away from you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you become more greedy, and you become
right.
And you should become more generous, right? You have more, you should be giving more away.
I ask kids, that's one of the questions that they get when I work with kids. What would you do if you had, I give them an amount of money.
Right.
Yeah. $1 million, $200,000 sometimes is something they can play with.
Right.
And it's always interesting to me what their response is, because what is it that's, sometimes they want a car, they want to pay for college. I'm always impressed when kids want to pay for their college education.
And it's sad that they're conditioned now to understand that they need to start young in order
it's going to take them $200,000, right?
Yeah, I mean it is. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so, the answer to that, what is happiness? Can money get you that? Is totally separate than, what is your time worth? What is money doing to you as a construct? Right. You have to have a certain amount of it to get your basic needs met. Most of us do.
Right.
Unless we're in the monastery or we're in jail.
Right.
Then your needs are met, in those ways.
Your basic needs, right, as you said.
Right. So I remember dreaming of the day when maybe I would make as much as my mechanic made. And this was after I had a college education and was working in my career for 10 years, wow, will I ever make as much as I'm paying my mechanic to fix my car? That was sort of the day that I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right.
For this job, I'm making
right.
that much money. And it was, it was this sort of feeling of I've accomplished something, not that I'd gotten any better at what I was doing, but when you're being paid more, that money is energy.
Right.
It's power.
This is an interesting, so somebody asked me last night, we were at a wedding last night, and someone asked me about the restaurant and how I got into the restaurant business. And I was, sort of relaying to her my story, my Reader's Digest version of my story. And I said before I moved to Maryland, I was in San Francisco, south of the city, working for a startup biotechnology company. And I said I was pretty stressed out. It was a not a good period in my life. And right. I said, and I have shared this twice in the last 6 months. And it's interesting. Towards the end, every morning before I went to work, I was throwing up or I would have diarrhea.
Wow. And how much
I went
money
to the
were you
doctors
making?
A lot. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And this is my point to her was, it's really crazy. I had no clarity about extracting myself from that. And because I was so, and I'm not proud to admit this, but I have to if I'm going to grow, is I was so intoxicated by the money and the power that I held within, and it's, and I went to, I can remember going to the doctors a couple times. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong, and just saying there is no way that this job, this career that I have, that I'm doing so well at, is making me physically ill. I was depressed.
Yeah.
Because I was stressed out. I had a lot of anxiety, I was stressed out. I had a lot on my shoulders.
Right.
And I would not go there
Yeah, you would
Like I would
not
not say,
look
no,
at
this is,
that.
I need to leave this.
Yeah.
It was so much part.
I can't leave that.
Well, my self-worth, and was so tied up in that.
Well, and it happened during the Depression too. Like when the stock market crashed, I mean, businessmen were jumping out of buildings. They literally, they could not imagine or envision who they were without that income.
And that happened present day too, right?
Yes.
After the economic crash.
Yeah.
So it's like we have this, I think, as a culture, we have this a dysfunctional relationship with money.
Well, because
right?
we do not live in a democracy. We live in a capitalist system.
Right.
So the people that own and have access to the most money are ruling the system. I mean, you buy your campaign, you have to pay. If you're not a millionaire, good luck. It's really hard to get elected. And then if you are elected, you don't have $1 million, you're getting donations from corporations that are giving you huge amounts of money.
Some politicians do that, not all of them. But so we won't go into. The topic is money. We're not going into politics.
No. Well, can you separate politics and money? Is the question. Can you separate money and in a capitalist society, they are one. I mean, they're working in conjunction with.
Right.
We have a budget. We have a national budget that is, what's the deficit now?
I don't know. It's
trillions.
In trillions.
It's in the trillions.
I don't know.
If my checkbook was in the deficit for $1 trillion, would I still be able to?
Well, this is also really interesting.
No, I would not.
So we'll go back, and this is an interesting point that you bring up, because you think of how our relationship with money has changed.
I'm all riled up now.
You are. Yeah, angry. So our relation, and I think about this even within I have a sister that's 12 years older than me, a brother that's 11 years older than me, and then a sister that's 5 years older than me. Okay. And I think of, and there's a point to this. So I'm
thank you for your family history.
No, I'm thinking about the generational difference
between
even
your
years,
siblings,
not even generations, even years, and the relationship to money that changed over those years.
Right.
And I think of my parents. They paid cash for everything.
Yep. My dad worked for the same company for 44 years.
Yeah. So you have and then you think of, there wasn't generous credit extended to everybody, right? I mean,
especially if you were
and then
black.
It started when we were in college. Okay, so you think about all of the credit card solicitations that you would get when you were in college. I remember in college,
get a Visa card. We'll give you a water bottle.
I had Visa and an American Express, right? And it's like, it was so easy. And so we started, our generation started, we were conditioned that it was okay.
Okay, I will say,
have the cash, right?
I am in your generation, and I was not conditioned because I grew up with a father who worked for the same company for 44 years and 4 kids.
Right.
And my mom and dad shared a vehicle for the first part of their marriage. So my mom was literally stuck at home, which it was, I felt for her after I became a mother.
Right.
Stuck at home with 4 kids, raising us on a really limited income.
Right.
I mean, we were working class poor. So we did not, we paid cash for everything. Credit was not something you would venture into unless absolutely necessary, like a mortgage for your house. Nobody went into bankruptcy. If you couldn't pay your mortgage, you took another job, you did whatever it took to pay your mortgage. I mean, I was so floored when people just started declaring bankruptcy all the time. And not only that, they would go take trips on their credit cards as they were doing it, because they knew it would all be forgiven in bankruptcy court.
And I think that, I guess my point is that relationship with credit started in our generation.
Well, that's
I'm not
what I'm
saying that you were, but
I was self-employed.
Right.
I wasn't working for a biotech company.
Yeah.
So I lived within my means.
Right.
I literally saved money and bought materials, saved money and did things. And now Like even now I don't have credit card debt. I didn't get a credit card until, I don't know, like late in my 20s when I absolutely had to rent a car. You had to have a credit card.
Right.
And never have paid interest on it. You know,
Right.
like I use my credit card because I know I have money to pay for it.
Right.
And that is something that, you know, like when the housing bubble happened and the economy recession happened, 10 years ago or 14 years ago, whenever that was, like people are totally scrambling. And I'm like, well, of course, you know,
Right.
like you've been living in a house of cards, like no one was living within their means. Like, how did we get there? How did we get there?
Well, I think that, back to the generous extension of letting people overextend themselves. And then that whole attitude that it's okay. Like, it's okay to, it's okay to put a $5,000 or whatever on your credit card because you can
Right.
pay for it over time.
Right.
I mean, it's making it more comfortable for you to appear that you have something that you actually don't.
You don't have, right.
And it's
And yet it's not bringing us happiness.
no, it's not.
Like, it's...
And then, you think of, the unsustainability of
Right.
a culture that is not engaging in, paying fair wages because there are corporations that have to report to shareholders, which won't
Right.
invest in them because, they're
all
they're
about
not
the
showing
bottom line.
right? Which
Right.
is what is, somebody said to me, we were at a retreat, the Krista Tibbett, the gathering in California last year, and there was another group that was there right before us that was it was a management consulting firm or something, and this guy was like, "Hey, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I own a restaurant." He said, "What is your bottom line? Something about my bottom line." And I said, "My bottom line, learned over the years that it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with, the quality of the environment, how you interact with your the people with whom you work. Is
Right.
it a nice place?
The
Is it a
quality
positive
of
place?
the food you're serving,
And,
the
and
happiness
he, and
of the
he
people
actually
coming.
this is what they were trying to. They were doing this management retreat, saying, look, you have to look at other things other than money.
But when we have given corporations the same
power
as individuals,
right?
And then that shareholder promise that you just talked about, like you have to deliver profit, So if that is the bottom line that you're working towards is a monetary one, then our whole system is unjust.
Right.
Because it's not looking at humans. It's not looking at the health of, the mental health of the employees that work there. It's not looking at the health of the environment that they're extracting, whatever
Right.
resources they're using. Like it's the system, the way it's set up is destined to
Fail.
Yeah.
It's not holistic.
It's
So
not holistic.
Yeah, you're looking
no, it's like going to the doctors. Like they're not looking at the whole picture, like you said.
Right.
They're not looking at you throwing up and having diarrhea because you're under stress because of this job.
Right.
They're looking at like, well, I don't see anything wrong.
Right,
You don't have a virus.
Right.
But if you don't look at the whole picture, you're not going to see the whole story.
Right.
And
which is, again, we have a political system. We have a economic system that it's very myopic or doesn't have a long-term view of
Right.
where we're headed. We're working in small little chunks, and with corporations, which you mentioned, it's a quarterly thing.
Right,
And it's like
right.
I'm sorry, that doesn't really, indicate the health of an organization, the financial health, or other, when you look at healthy holistically, it doesn't.
Right.
And when people are forced to look at that, there's no investment in, long term.
Well, and long term, like a lot of Native American tribes,
right?
7 generations
right.
of how does this impact not
7 generations
you,
removed from
not
us,
your kids, not your grandkids,
Right.
great grandkids. Like, how does that really look? And then there's another great proverb, only until the last fish is caught and the last tree is cut down that we will realize we cannot eat money.
Right.
Like when does that come into play with this system of currency that
Right.
we're using? And, maybe bartering is
I was
something
just
to
going
look
to say
at.
we should go back to bartering.
Maybe it is something to look
We've
at.
bartered.
We have bartered. Absolutely.
But there's other, I look at people who have a lot of means to improve the lives of others. I donate to, various nonprofit organizations that choose not to, or, it's a modest donation.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's research that when you give, it increases serotonin levels in the brain.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
get this, there's a good feeling you get from
Yeah.
being
Good for you.
it's very, and then, back to the original question, like, how much do you need? Like,
How much do you need? Yeah.
And,
well, right now, I think part of the problem that we're in is that we're not thinking about our needs. We're thinking about, okay, our needs and then the needs of my children and my grandchildren that haven't been born yet, and I need a trust fund for them, and I need to stockpile all this so that our people, our family
our
is
tribe,
okay.
right?
Yeah. And then it's not about how is the whole system working, and that's not to belabor the Native Americans, but there's a tribal element where it's not until the least person in the tribe is completely cared for and provided for that the whole is achieved.
Right.
And we are so far from that in this society, even though we're one of the more affluent societies on the planet. And yet we have more poverty and more incarceration and more money. How is that possible?
Happen? Right.
Well, it's possible because right now so much of the money is held by such a small percentage of people that are not willing to come off of it.
Yeah, I heard a really staggering, the top three, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and
Bezos, the Amazon
have
guy.
more, their combined wealth is greater than 50% of our population. 50% of the wealth in our country, in our population. I was like, what?
Oh,
that is
easily.
And
probably 90%. I mean, I can't imagine it's so out of balance.
But I mean, what I'm
the
saying is
Occupy Wall Street movement
right.
was so on target for me.
Right.
To understand. I mean, I remember a friend of mine saying it seems unjust to seed money to make more money.
Right.
For you to say, all right, I got $100,000, make me some more money. I'm not going to do anything but sit on my butt over here, and I'm not going to be concerned about what practices are being observed, who's being exploited, what what poisons are being spewed out into the environment. Just get me my 8%
and I think that's
back.
one thing too, is if you're going to have your faith, it puts your faith, which is in this case,
you're
money,
trusting someone else
money
with your to have your ethics.
What right, exactly. And often the case that, for
they're not going to be aligned.
We compartmentalize too.
Oh yeah,
right?
because we want the cash.
Is it you think of, you invest in a company that, engages in, say, I'm just child labor. Mm-hmm. Okay, you have a kid. Do you want your kid working 12 hours a day at 8 years old or whatever? That's an exaggeration, but why?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, why are you investing your money in a company that is exploiting children, and you have your own? Would you want that to happen to your child?
Right.
I mean, and
I looked into investments that had socially responsible practices, and I'm thinking okay, who is out there that does that? McDonald's was on that list. They
bought it.
I didn't go to McDonald's. Well, no, they have really great hiring practices.
Right.
They hire without discrimination, disabled, they'll hire anyone. So they made that list.
But they're perpetuating,
But do I disagree with so many other of their practices?
Right.
Yes, but they're on the list. So even if you try to do some, light research and put your money somewhere where it's good, I mean, I just don't know if you can. Yeah, it's a lot of work. And I have to say, on the topic of money, I had and still struggle with a serious distrust of people that have a lot of money.
Right.
Because to me, they're not very good sharers.
Right.
You know, like if you have that much money, like then you have not been sharing very well.
Right.
Or what are you doing with it? And I've met people that have changed my perception of that. I mean, I've often said, like, I should not have a lot of money because I don't know if I'm responsible enough to do what needs to be done. It's a lot of responsibility. If money is energy, then you have a huge amount of energy that you are managing. And, you know, I've worked for Jennifer Stanley for years. She is one of the people that helped me understand, you know, she had an immense amount of wealth due to she and her husband's success. And I watched her remain grounded and in touch with reality and sweating
Right.
on bikes with kids, you know, working to create a camp where kids learned how to sail and camp and practice art and archery and, you know, like things that she believed in. And she set up foundations that help to educate and promote social justice and environmental justice. And like she used her money, she and Ted used their money to do the things that they believed in. You know, their organization gave $2 million a year away to try to make those things happen. And, you know, it's all sunsetting out of now that Ted's gone and she's, you know, closing in on retirement. And to see people like Richard, I have to say, too, you know, who uses his money to promote and change things that are unjust in his immediate community and a larger community. You know, something about your restaurant. You know, I support people who are using their money, who are using their businesses to practice their belief system that is in alignment with mine. You know, like I want people that are using organic food, you know, that are taking care of their employees, that are using cleaning products, that are taking care of the earth, that are filling the walls with art, that are supporting. I mean, you have artists in your restaurant, you take nothing from them. Here's a place to hang your work. Please try to sell it. You know, like those situations are not the norm. And if that were the case, you know, maybe it would be a little bit easier.
Well, I always think that, you know, this whole conversation that's swirling around about the minimum wage. And I think the people that are making those decisions, if they had to, for a month, live on minimum wage, then the conversations would clearly be, you know, different. And
yes. Or to know what it's like to try to get out of the cycle of poverty once you're in it.
Right. And I think that opens up a whole nother, you know, and we've talked about this before. There is a something called bandwidth poverty, which when you're in, you know, you're in a daily in a situation trying to figure out how, you know, you're going to eat, you know, whether your shelter is going to be there tomorrow. Right. You can't look beyond.
No, you can't strategize on how.
I mean, it starts affecting your neurochemistry about how you can't even think about saving, buying a house. Forget it. I can't. You know, I can only figure out how I'm going to get through today. Is the electricity going to be on?
And how am I going to pay back that payday loan shark that you know, like filled in the gap for me?
Right. Yeah, and it's you know, you think about how we got to this point to where we're so off the mark and how we're taking care of each other.
Well, we're not teaching kids about basic finances. You know, they don't understand how it works. They don't understand compounding interest. You know, all they see is the same thing, the credit card. Oh, you only have to pay $25 even though you charged,
right. Or you go to an ATM machine and you put this plastic card in and you get money.
It just spits it right back out. Yeah.
I don't know. It's
we're asking our kids to like pay for their education with the same amount of money that our parents, like more money than our parents had to go into debt to buy a house.
Right.
You know, to get out of college in a job market that is not strong and have $150,000 of debt. I mean, talk about stress.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, that's, education is a whole nother topic, but, how we are, a bumper sticker that I have seen over and over again is, relates to education and war, how much money we spend on war versus how much money we spend on education. And it's like, why is there, this is not the bumper sticker. It's not a paragraph.
Right.
I'm just saying it says,
right.
That's what it intimates that, I carry. You remember, have you seen that bumper sticker?
Could we have a bake sale to raise money for the Pentagon and the Pentagon's budget to use for education?
Right, you get the point. It's just doesn't make any sense, like to, to a reasonably intelligent person. And why do we keep making these decisions? Is there really, I think about, are the threats real? I think we're the threat is us. and
the threat
and how
is
we
us.
Engage and
if we spend half the money on peace initiatives that were not, thinly veiled war machines, where we actually were helping to build infrastructure in places where we were offering transportation, bicycles, food, where goodwill was being created instead of fear and threats. Right now, we're using fear to, raise taxes to build more of a military machine.
Well, and what's interesting too is you think of, okay, so, let's take the stock market, for example, how we have this weird codependent relationship with the stock market. It's almost like a higher power. And like 80% of the people in the country aren't invested in the stock market, right? Or invested.
80%?
It's like 20, I think, do you know this statistic? It's like 80% of the population is not invested in the stock market. It's 20%
that is
of our population who has their money invested in the stock market. And there's this, crazy relationship with it.
Right.
It's like I hear
the
people
first
say,
thing on the news
well,
every
I'm not
day.
going to be coming out to dinner because my, the stock market went down or whatever. It's a crazy way to, it's a crazy benchmark. And it's like, it's sort of this unattainable entity there that in as far as understanding and what is affecting it and what is, I don't know. It's back to our relationship with money. And, the question at the beginning was, or you said, why don't we, bartering seems so much easier. And, you do see more of that now, right?
You do.
You do. You see, you hear a lot more about people exchanging services, goods and services, not for money.
Right.
But for goods and services.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful social component to that, right? You have a relationship with that person. You have we do have a relationship with money, but it's not tangible. When you're bartering for goods and services, there's an intimacy there. There's a trust. There's a whole. Do you have that with money?
Right. No, but I am the person that still walks inside my bank, and deposits money and withdrawals and does all my transactions with real live people.
Right.
And I ask about their kids and they ask about mine and I show them pictures of what I'm working on. And there is a relationship on that level that's important. It's money itself is neutral. It's what is being done with it.
Right. Back to the money is the root of all evil. Is it money that is the root of all evil? It's our relationship to it, right?
It's our relationship to it. It's the greed that can result from it. And then, there is this infatuation we have as a culture with wealth. And the people with the most money are the the ones
Well,
that are the most
and that's what I was going to say.
valued.
Look, I've had conversations with people recently where, and this happens a lot. Somebody will say, well, do you know how much money they have? I said, I don't really care. So are they a good person? Mm-hmm. And I said, for some reason, I didn't say this recently to somebody. I said, for some reason, we, as a culture, we think if somebody has a lot of money and they're an asshole, then that's okay.
Right.
Or they're a bad person. It's okay because they have, why it's...
Because
it's so
they're
distorted.
successful, because we view that as success. Money is success. It's a capitalist society. If you have a lot of money, you win. But you win the game. And the game is government. The game is contracts. The game is fame. I mean, it's tied up. Like if you are impoverished, you do not, you look at people like Jesus or Gandhi, like they chose poverty. They chose enlightenment over money. And anyone that does that now, anyone that doesn't try to maximize their wealth.
There were different times then too, Sue. There wasn't this, right now we're just experiencing just extraordinary and disgusting wealth. That really...
extraordinary and disgusting wealth next to abject and heightened poverty. We're at both ends of the spectrum. That's the separation. It is we have more super, super rich people and more super, super poor people happening side by side. And where is the middle ground?
Yeah, we were in D.C. yesterday for a wedding, and I came in kind of running parallel to New York Avenue and came up to an underpass where there were
a homeless
tents, and they were nice. I think that the city had provided these tents. They were nice Coleman tents, and my reaction was, wow, this is crazy. Well, first of all, I said, wow, those are nice. That's if you choose to be homeless, choose, right. And some people do, yeah. Right? Some people don't. And you think that's, it's not permanent, but it's shelter. And then 200 feet from, this underpass are luxury apartments. Mm-hmm. And
that are probably lobbying to get those people thrown out of the...
Right. Or, people are walking by and won't engage, or, won't say, hey, what's your story?
Right.
How just it
well,
doesn't...
because your humanity is negated when you don't have the wealth to back you up. We have reframed what success is, and we've merged it with how much money you have. And so if you have so little money that you can't afford to live somewhere, then
but it's almost
you don't have the same worth.
You almost, and this, I don't know why this just came into my mind, but 17th century France, and it came into my mind for some reason, and you think, okay, you think of is this really... you think of a capitalistic society, you think of a democracy, and it's I feel like we're living in a monarchy of wealth, held by a very, very few people. And you have kind of the same dynamic, right?
Right.
You have people that are so out of touch.
Yeah.
And
let them eat cake.
And you're, so there's not, I don't know, it's
we can wrap
distressing.
Up too.
Okay. The other thing that I was going to say is, I've had conversations about, how important it is to keep affordable housing in Easton, and what affordable means to some people.
Right.
When you're a millionaire, they think affordable is $900 a month.
Right.
When you talk to somebody that's making $10 or $11 an hour,
it's got to be $500 bucks.
I got to share that apartment with somebody else. Yeah. So it's the people that are making the decisions. You mentioned this earlier, are completely out of touch with reality on what it takes to survive.
How much does a gallon of milk cost? They ask you. I'm like, I have no idea. I haven't been into a store. I had to do them.
But but it's the. So somebody threw out, well, if somebody's property taxes increase $100 or their rent $100 a year, that's not that much. Yeah, that is. you know, an extra $10, you know, in your pocket is a lot. That's a lot of money. And I think that, you know, our problem is, you know, we're involved in a system where there is not a good cross-section of people that are making decisions.
Right.
And they're not represented.
Right.
And that's a whole nother topic.
Because